15 years I got.
Welcome to the Wednesday edition of Detroit in Black and White. I'm Adolph Mongo. Good evening, Alan Lango, co-founder of Deadline Black and White. I'm Adolph Mongo.
Good evening.
Okay, I heard an echo in the background.
Yeah,
right?
right. I think Eric might be coming.
And down there.
All right.
Other feed.
Okay. Hey, Eric Brown, how you doing?
I'm okay. How about everyone else?
Good. And Jim Nardoni, our resident enforcement. Well, tonight I wanted to talk about there's two high-profile trials that was taking place last week and this week. One in Memphis and Grand Rapids, where I think it's going to be a hung jury, but I'm not quite sure of what's going to happen there. Let's go to Jim. What happened in Memphis today? Three.
Do you want to show the video first?
Yes.
My hell. I just re-opened my shit back up, bro. My leg, bro. My knee.
Well, these guys just bragged about they kicked somebody's ass, and Jim, what did you think of that video when it first came out?
Awful. First, hi, Sam. Hey, Charles and Edward. How are you all tonight? Here's my position. This is the painful part here. The person should be standing trial as their chief of police, Sarah Davis. She should be facing charges. She brought this Red Dog mentality, a unit that she worked with in Atlanta, that the no holds barred enforcement team. We've had them in Detroit. You guys can talk about what happened. Some of these big cities, they take no prisoners and they beat down citizens because they're trying to get totals, right? So my first question was, when they said 3 were acquitted today, there's 5. There's 5 guys that assaulted this young man, killed him, right? They absolutely killed him. There is no question, right? He didn't die of a heart attack. He didn't die of a drug overdose. He died of a beating, all right? Well, 2 of them cut a deal, first with the federal authorities and then with the state authorities. And I believe they pled guilty to second-degree murder and kidnapping and witness tampering, whatever they all pled guilty to, so they could get 15 years out of the deal. Well, the other 3 guys, it looks like, and I'm not excusing anything they did, but they were holding the guy down while the 2 guys that made a deal with the government were beating this guy down. And that's my biggest problem. They should have charged them all. They had all the evidence. Why are you cutting deals with killers when you have the evidence on tape?
Were you surprised that they were found not guilty? Because I wasn't.
I'm not surprised. I think anytime the cops invoke and say, all right, we felt our lives were threatened or whatever, and that's what's going to happen in Grand Rapids. He's going to say he was on top of the guy.
He already said it.
Right.
And he said, I felt my life threatened. I think people give the benefit of the doubt whenever they say my life's being threatened, not taking in totality the whole thing, which is like, why did it even get to this point? And why were you in a situation where you should even, I mean, it's crazy.
This is a cold-blooded killing in Memphis. This is a cold-blooded killing of 5 men, killed a 29-year-old, 145-pound man. I was a cop for 28 years. I defend that, I see why people can disagree about what happened in Grand Rapids. Whether you agree or you don't agree, you can say, this is a cold-blooded execution in Grand Rapids. But another guy can say, well, look, if he got his taser, that cop's life was in danger and he was going to die. So you can see where people disagree. I don't see that in Memphis. I saw the tape. I don't see any question about what happened in Memphis personally.
So what makes in Memphis, Eric? What should happen to the people that's in charge of the police department in Memphis, Tennessee? The police chief, the folks that created that rogue unit,
Scorpion unit. She should be. I'm not sure if she's still there. I thought she had resigned, but anyway, if she's still there, she should be let go. But a lot of this goes all the way back to January of 2023 when this first happened. I'm not sure if you all remember. It was not even shown on a 24/7 news cycle because it didn't fit the narrative of the media. The narrative being white cops doing something to a black victim. It took someone letting the media know for people to begin to get outraged about it when it finally hit the 24/7 news cycle. And, as far as today's verdict, I was very surprised. I saw some of the trial. I was very surprised they got acquitted of all 7 charges, including misconduct, because it was misconduct. And Jim could speak to this more, but it just shows that people, for whatever reason, the jury was out of Chattanooga, by the way. It wasn't a Memphis jury. They were out of Chattanooga. And I'm not sure of the makeup of the jury yet, but this was a miscarriage of justice at the highest level.
It's an all-white jury is what I read today.
I'm not surprised. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Sorry, it was a bit delayed. And thank you, everybody, for watching Detroit in Black and White. Good evening. You want me to weigh in on this?
Yes.
One, listen, as an attorney, you have a jury. I told somebody today, it's a crapshoot. You don't know what you're going to get. And in this case, you have a jury, not necessarily a jury or peers. A lot of people think jury or peers mean your neighbor. No, listen, people need to be involved. When you get that summons to go to jury duty, that's your civic duty. You should participate. Okay. If you want a different outcome, then you need to participate. I was not shocked at all. I thought that I think it's a crying shame, or as I said the other day, it's a crime. But I'm not shocked at all that they were found not guilty. And I'm going to say, for what's going on in Grand Rapids, I'm not going to be shocked if it comes out that he is not guilty. Period.
Well, Alan, listen, it seems like around the country, and I'm Cincinnati, where the police shot a so-called car thieves while they was running away from them and killed one of the teenagers. That the father of the teenager, after viewing the body cam footage, went out and run over a deputy who was conducting the traffic on campus somewhere that had nothing to do with what happened to his son. But he was so frustrated, so pissed off that he said, I'm going to have to kill me a cop. He didn't say it out loud, but that's what it seems like.
Did it. He apparently
are we going to get more of this vigilante type shit? Are we going to be at war?
It's not the first time we've seen people, go out and kill cops for whatever reason. I don't know that it'll be a trend, but sometimes, look, we saw in Dallas several years ago where police were, shot at.
Killed, or were assassinated.
Yeah, they were assassinated, and it's happening. I mean, it's a shame that the frustration out there is that we're still seeing too many. I don't understand it. Why all these cases we've got now, like 20, 30 years of cases like this, why there isn't better training. I mean, in the Grand Rapids case, we can actually watch, we have some short little clips. Let me play these.
Stay in the car. Stay in the car. Stay in the car. Do you have a license?
For what?
I'm stopping you. Do you have a license?
What that?
Do you have a driver's license? Do you speak English?
Yes.
No. Stop. Stop. Put your hands right here. Stop.
I'm gonna do it to him. To you.
Let go of the taser. Drop taser.
And it's at this point in the tape you can see the officer reach for his firearm. He shoots Lyoya in the back of the head, killing him.
You see a police officer escalate a minor traffic stop into a deadly execution.
I mean, look, it didn't have to get to that point, and Jim can probably speak to it best in terms of how that could have been handled in another way.
Yeah, I could have let him go, but here's the truth. There's in the last 6 years, there's been between 54 million and 61 million police contacts by U.S. citizens. About 90% of the people say they had a positive experience with a police officer. There's about roughly 1,000 police-involved shootings that kill people in the United States per year. Less than about 100 of them are ever followed up or ever questioned. It's too many. I'm not going to sit there and argue that one death is too many.
I was just getting
about to say, Jim.
You don't want to be the family member of an individual that's killed. You
Or
don't want
someone-
to be that when it happens to you or happen to someone in your family or your neighbor, don't nobody want to hear those statistics.
Now, you don't want to be the person.
Never ever happen.
You don't want to be the person that gets stopped. And I think about when I was in high school, I wouldn't come to Detroit because the few times that you came downtown, we pulled out the car by the Big Four twice in a span of 20 minutes. You on the ground, they got their foot on the back of your neck, and they saying you're in a stolen car, and they doing all kind of shit going through the car and stuff because they see 4 young black teenagers in the car. We was going to the Fox Theater. We had skipped school to go to the movies, and there we are on the ground. Soon as we got back in the car, drive around the building, here come another unmarked police car. We out on the ground again. I say,
Oh my God.
we gotta get the fuck out of here.
What were you thinking when that was happening?
That we gonna get shot. That's what we're thinking. You know, this is the era of stress where undercover cops was shooting teenagers and doing all kind of crazy shit. You know, and listen, people scared to even stop for the police. Now we still got that same mentality. As Tamara Rice parents, where he playing with a toy gun and someone called it in and said, I think he got a toy gun. And they went there and shot him like 10 seconds after they get there.
Those guys should have not been police officers. Those 2 guys were fired police officers from somewhere else.
Right. And then, and these guys from Memphis, they can be blue, black, brown, or whatever. They'll be somewhere with a gun and a badge.
They were following the direction of their leadership.
I agree with you. They were following. I mean, when that story first hit the press, they did a very extensive, we got a whole lot of information about special training. And basically, look, they were trained to not only catch the bad guy, but to do what you need to do to make sure that you have the bad guy. And so, listen, you think that these guys are going to get another job in a policing agency? Probably not. Their lives have been ruined.
It ain't. I think they're gonna be working. They're gonna be working.
They'll be working, but not as police officers.
You'd be surprised.
I don't see it.
You'd be surprised.
I don't see it.
Listen, Highland Park hire they hire police officers who get their ass kicked.
They don't count. They don't count.
East Point, Harper Woods, they got the same shit. They don't check. They don't check.
You know what? I think what we saw in Memphis with this gang, we've seen here in Detroit historically with the Big Four guys who would just drive around and just kick the shit out of people. We saw the gang squad, going around kicking the shit out of people. They wanted to say they own the street, and these guys were like gang members. They become gang members, and they're in their own little gang with the protection of the law. They go out and just break the law.
What they mistake is that they don't know who the criminals and who the law-abiding citizens, because you can't just kick everybody's ass.
Right.
Listen, I rode with the gang squad for a week when I worked for Coleman Young, and I see what they dealing with. They dealing with criminals, people that don't have a problem shooting in the crowds and shooting at kids and whatever. But yet you got to know who you're going after. You can't beat up 60 or 70-year-old folks, or just pull somebody off the street, or because you got the baddest gang in town and you see somebody on the street at 2 o'clock in the morning going home, you can't kick his ass.
Right.
That's because you want to kick his ass. That's what they was doing in Memphis.
Yeah.
And now they walking away because they went to Chattanooga and they got on the Chattanooga choo-choo and got freed. Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting is the two guys that took the plea. I know they got to be mad as I don't know what, because the other three guys, listen, they were found out guilty.
Well, they roll the dice and they won. Let's take a break and we'll come back and continue this conversation about these high-profile police cases.
Okay, hold on a second. I gotta find the.
Pressure.
Hi, I'm
Al.
Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Listen, we had, and I'm coming to you, Vanessa. Didn't we have a few years ago when Warren Evans was the police chief? We had our own high-profile cases of a young girl who was asleep on the couch, and they raided and they shot up the house because they had cameras. Cops, they was filming some bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to go and do a shout out. First of all, I want to thank everybody that is watching Detroit in Black and White on YouTube as well as on Facebook. I want to go to some of the comments. Let me go. So we have Tosca White. She said, wow. Tracy Huff said, good evening. DeWegler said, good evening. Derek Henry said, what up, though? Sam said, good evening to all. Queen B says, listen, I don't she don't think anyone is surprised anymore. Chip Tracy 3324, our cops are trained to be militant. Same day parlay, hello. Angela Beatty said, good evening, everyone. Jill Sheridan said, good evening. We also have a comment. Inkster hired that fire officer, and for being corrupt and assaulted people, they snatched somebody out of the car there and beat them up. So we have our viewers. We also have viewers on Facebook. Thank you for watching on Facebook. We have Marvin Essex and Angela Beebe. They're watching.
Well, did you see the story? We got our own little scandal here in Metro Detroit where the two Dearborn Heights cops saying that they was forced to perform oral sex on their commanding officer. Jim, a lot of that going on
yeah, I don't know. I'm retired, but the young lady's name was Ayanna Monet Stanley Jones that lost her life in 2010. And I'm just glad Queen Bee's here. We lost her for a couple shows, so I was a little worried about her. I'm sorry. I don't think so, Adolph. I don't know.
Well, I don't know. But you know what? It's hard being a cop. I had relatives that it was police officers and stuff. I had one that he got shot up several times and he retired and became a minister. He said enough was enough, the streets was too tough. You know,
So,
when
Can I
you don't
respond to
know
Chip?
who's the bad person or who's not the bad person, it's time to walk away from the shit.
Can I respond to Chip Tracy 3324, if I may, just real
Go
brief?
ahead.
And I said it earlier in our segment here. I think they were being rewarded for the arrest. It was a numbers game, and if that young man Tyree Nichols had not passed away, they would have been celebrating that arrest later that night. They would have been celebrating it, but he
I
just
agree with you, Jim. I agree with you.
and that's exactly the point. They wanted them to behave that way. And
Absolutely.
you know, it's no different than the Algiers, going back to the Algiers motel, whatever. We're going to do this. We're going to keep these people out of Midtown. We're going to do this, right? We know what happened back then.
And they took the trial, the Algiers motel. They took the trial and they moved it to Mason, Michigan. But after what they did to those three guys, shot them all over, you know, made sure it's unbelievable that, you know, that they got away with it. But
Same mindset. We're going to control the streets.
When we hear stories like this, right, and you're dealing with, say, for instance, we're going to use the city of Detroit, and you have people who don't live in the city, that is not vested in the neighborhood, they live elsewhere. People feel like, hey, we can't trust the police. We don't respect the police. Just these few bad apples, right? And it's really too bad, because we need everybody to make this thing work, right? We need this.
Who you gonna call when you got somebody breaking in your house?
Right, exactly. Who you gonna call with somebody pushing you on the ground and robbing you? Who are you gonna call? You know.
But sometimes
you have to trust that you can, and pray that whoever you call is going to actually protect you and do their job. Okay.
But sometimes they end up being the worst thing to do, because you want to call the police to help you, and it turns out they don't help you at all, and somebody ends up getting killed or laying out or whatever.
I think we see a lot of things. We see a lot of issues with people who have family members who have mental health issues, and the person might have a knife or a gun or something. They call the police for assistance, try to calm the person down. The police end up showing up and killing that person, which was not the intent of the whole thing. It was to de-escalate, and we see the police come and just shoot. We see it so often. I think, and again, I'll ask Jim, are the police being trained in these key situations to respond in alternative ways to just shooting someone?
With all due respect to your statement and to Vanessa, no death, every death is a tragedy. But when you say all too often, you're talking about dozens of times out of 60 million, right? I'm not making excuses for any death. I am not. But the numbers are.
One is too many, Jim.
I agree.
One is fucking too many, and we dealing with it. And you know, somebody in their backyard or somebody sitting in their apartment, and the cop drunk came from the bar, went in the wrong apartment. I'm talking about what happened in Texas somewhere. Shoot the guy because she thought he was in her apartment, or cops came in the wrong, had a search warrant, and the guy that's the Air Force veteran, pulled his gun out and said somebody's breaking into my place, and they had the wrong address, and he gets shot down. It's just one too many.
What happened in Minnesota? Was it a young lady that called for help? Was it somewhere in Minnesota and they showed up? She asked for help and the police showed up and killed her?
Yeah. That was Minnesota. She was from Australia.
Right, exactly.
You know, they give a family $20 million or whatever, but that don't bring anybody. Nobody wants that kind of fucking money. I call it blood money.
So one of our viewers says, Edward Altman says, as a Detroiter, he says, I'm always on 10 when any police stop me because I don't know which cop is going to show up. That is quite a statement.
Well, when I got into it about a cop stopped me to take my car, I just got a car. They called me a thief and stuff, and we argued. But I thought about it and said, well, get your supervisor. He didn't want to get the supervisor, but his 5 cars show up. Oh my God, man.
Wait a minute. Speaking of 5 cars, what was that the other day? What's that, about 10 cars the other day?
Yeah.
Because somebody stole something out of a Nike store.
Yeah.
Seriously, it's about 10 police cars looking for one person that stole something out of a Nike store. You talk about a waste of money.
That doesn't make any sense. In Detroit?
Yeah. Well, listen.
Yes.
What was he wanted for? It was just a larceny?
Yes, at the Nike store, but it's downtown Detroit. And then the guy that I was talking to, the valet guy, said the night before he had a drunk driver had ran into his vehicle. Now, this is downtown Detroit. It's safe down here. A drunk driver had hit his vehicle. He's trying to get the drunk driver's insurance information. The drunk driver tried to jump on him and take his phone because he's taking a picture of the license plate. He calls the police. 4 hours later, 4 o'clock in the morning, they called him on the phone and said, "Do you still need us?"
All right.
Well,
you had this guy in Grand Rapids stop a guy. He was drunk. Now, he was heck of a drunk. But you stop him for a simple traffic matter, right? And this is what happens. This is
He made plenty of mistakes.
Well, I want to ask Eric. I saw outside the courtroom in Grand Rapids, they were protesting and stuff. You think if they don't find him guilty, and the prosecutors say we're not going to retry this case, is there going to be some issues in the city of Grand Rapids in the Black community?
Well, I've already said, and I posted this, that there would be a different reaction from the community with regards to him getting off in Grand Rapids versus the Black cops getting off in Memphis, Tennessee. For some reason, we have been conditioned, and I'm including everybody in American society into this. We've been conditioned to have a different reaction when a white cop kills a Black person versus Black cops killing a Black person. As I stated earlier, the initial reaction from the situation in Memphis was crickets.
Well,
the initial reaction in the situation in Rapids.
We have had our share of Black cops. We had a cop here named Eugene Brown. I think he was involved in about 5 or 6 fatal shootings in the city of Detroit. And
but there's never been
he was like a hitman in the city. You know, people scared.
But there's never been a great deal of outrage with regards to him. There's never been a great deal of outrage with regards to him. And one thing that, I've moderated a police with teenagers and young college students, as well as attended numerous panel discussions here in Detroit, as well as in Southfield. In my 44 years of driving, I've had a car almost all 44 of those years. I've had maybe about 10 interactions with the cops. My worst interaction was and it was a Black cop. You know, at the end of the day, going back to the panel discussions, and this is probably something Jill can relate to, the one thing that is told to the teenagers, and we did a big youth groups of the Alphas, the Kappas, the Sigmas, the Omegas, and they constantly tell people it's about. So I was in Alabama over the weekend, and I got the alert about the situation that happened in East Point. You know, with the girl sister shooting and killing 2 of the people. And I also got the alert about what happened in Cincinnati. Outrage with regard to both of them are starkly different. And I don't care what no one say. At the end of the day, the vengeance of that father going to kill another innocent person makes no sense whatsoever to me. It doesn't.
No.
You know, I
Probably doesn't make
I
any
will not
sense
be
to him
one
either.
to.
Well, you know what? I think he probably
doesn't make
he
sense to
probably
him.
regret what he's doing. My thing is how do we hit on some of this shit? You know, can you really find a jury out there that's going to do the right thing, or it depends on the community? Where when you had Butson and Nevers here in Detroit, you know, people cried foul that was pro cop, saying, "Oh, they didn't get a fair deal in Recorder's Court." So what did the state do? They get rid of Recorder's Court. You know, saying make it all part of the circuit court. So, you know, go ahead, Alan.
I was going to say, you know, Jim, I appreciate, you know, when you put the contextual thing of how many stops are made and how many confrontations and the number, but the cases that we are seeing are still cases that are textbook cases where they shouldn't be happening. It doesn't matter if they're minuscule, they're still happening, even if it's once a month, once every 4 months. In America, it's happening all the time. There's still textbook cases where we're looking at them, and even other police officers are saying, I would have done this. Like in Grand Rapids, there were officers who said, I would have let him run. You know, he could have.
It's easy to say that 2 years after when you're sitting in your living room.
No,
It's
no,
a
it was
different animal when you're doing it live.
But why not? Why not have people trained in these situations to figure out? Okay, what do we do? Do we chase this guy? Should we let it go? There should be firm policies there.
Well, if he let him go and he's on a body cam, and I'm the cop supervisor, I'm gonna write him up. Might suspend him for not doing your job.
But if there's a policy saying, look, if he's running, you know, you got his car right there, you got his buddies in the car right there. I mean, the guy's not going anywhere.
Okay, so he runs. Now I'm gonna just play the little advocate. He runs and he runs over somebody, or he go kill somebody, and you let him go. You know, I'm not in the shoes. I'm not in the shoes of the cop.
But you know what? When you say he could kill somebody, I mean, anybody could kill somebody if he has a record, if he's wanted for a violent crime. That's one thing. But the guy, they stopped him.
The blood alcohol of 0.29, Alan.
Okay. They stopped him because he had a bad plate. The plate didn't belong on the car. That was the original reason for the stop.
Both the victim and the cop made some fucked up decisions that night. Yeah, and here we are in a courtroom where, you know, one is dead, the other one is fighting for his life, saying, you know what, I can spend the rest of my life in jail, you know, and I'm sure he regrets even being working that day.
Driving by, he should have just drove by him.
Yeah, I should have just let him go. Go ahead, Vanessa.
Adolph, you hit on a point that I was getting ready to make. At the end of the day, listen, it shouldn't have happened in both cases, but it did. And we also know that, guess what? You have a right to go to trial, right? You have the right to remain silent. You have a right to have a jury trial. They had a trial. They went through the due process. And guess what? In one instance, listen, they were found now guilty. This other instance, we don't know what's going to happen, but it looks like it's probably going to be a hung jury. But at the end of the day, the process is what it is. We may not like it, but guess what? We have to live by it.
Well, our federal government is sending mixed messages. You got a president that's pardoning all these assholes that attacked the police officers on January the 6th, trying to overthrow Congress, etc. And yet they have trashed the FBI, the CIA, and all our police institutions. And then on the other hand, they saying, hey, we're pro cops, we're pro this. They sending mixed messages. What are you? Do you support the police? The people that died in DC that fought to protect our, that you pissed on them by letting out most of the criminals that pleaded guilty and got convicted. Eric, go ahead.
So Jill Sheridan made a great point. She said communication breakdown. And she said that prior to me jump in to talk about the Michael Brown case in Missouri. That is the perfect example of communication breakdown, as well as a city that failed to adapt to the Black people versus the mostly white police force. They did a terrible job of diversity training. Michael Brown, if you go back to that situation, Michael Brown should have simply walked away. He kept going back and forth with the officer. The officer did a terrible job of de-escalating the situation. Mike Brown,
it's not against the law to question the cops. Now, I should have been shot dead according to that because
go back to the video, Adolf.
That officer
it wasn't just a matter of questioning the cop. He was jaywalking. There's a few things that was wrong with that situation. Go back to that situation in Missouri with regards to Michael Brown.
But he should. But those cops in Ferguson made a living off in the Black community. That ticketed a predominantly Black community. That's how they funded their programs in that community by tickets. And,
no, it wasn't.
So whatever Michael Brown did, he shouldn't have died.
Community became, that's my point. The community became Black, and that's where they failed with regard to their diversity trend that moved into Ferguson. Prior to
Eric, something's wrong with your internet connection because every other word.
If I may, I'm sorry.
So I don't
just
know
for a second, I want to add this to Eric.
But it's cut off we get every other word.
Yeah.
I just want to add to Eric's point there. That police officer pulled up to Michael Brown. He didn't get out of his car. He sat in his car. He gave Michael Brown the upper hand, and that's why it led to that death. That police officer is responsible for not getting out of his car and acting like a police officer. He rode up to him like, hey, asshole, do this, do that. That cop is culpable. I'm not going to say he's responsible, but that should have never happened. He should have got out of his car, put him on the other side of the car, and dealt with him. He pulled up to him in a car, and cops do that sometimes. Detroit, they pull up, they're too lazy to get out of their car and deal with an issue. That would have never happened. That policeman would have got out of his car and taken control of that.
Well, we seen that Ohio seemed to have a whole lot of this stuff, especially in Columbus, where they had 3 or 4 deadly shootings of folks that's in their backyard or in the house and all this other crazy shit, or the 13-year-old girl in a backyard. And it happens so often, it seems. And Jim, you said it's so many interactions with the cops that 5 or 6 times. I still say that's too many.
The one in Ohio that you're talking about, I forget the young man's name with the toy gun. That made me absolutely sick for about a week. Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, the young Rice, 11
year old Rice. Yeah, that is an absolute execution. They were too lazy. They didn't get out of the car either. Now, did they? They pulled up to the kid who was under the pavilion. They didn't get out of the car and they shot him. That's lazy policing to start with. That's not an excuse. Get out of the car and find out what's going on. Same thing happened in Ferguson. He pulls up to him and just says, "Hey, you're just an asshole. Do what I tell you to do."
Didn't the cop that killed Miss Jones here in Detroit get off?
That I don't know.
Miss Jones, what case is that, Adolf? I don't know what you talk about. We have
Alicia Jones. He eventually got off. It was a hung jury. He was retired. He got off.
The young girl that was sleeping on the couch.
No. Okay.
I don't even want to talk about that because I have my own opinion about that. That I don't even want to go there.
Well, I'm
the first 48 episode.
That was for sure.
That was terrible.
That was a child dying for sure.
Situation.
Let's take a commercial break, and we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in a home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, The probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Vanessa, why don't you read some of the comments? From
Yes. Derek Henry says, good evening. Marcia Gilmore, she says she thinks the crime is so bad. Do they think they need to hire these bad officers? Janet said, Janet Sulluck said, greetings to all. She agreed with you, Jim. Jill Sheridan said she was thinking about times where family members call for help with people having psychotic episodes. 911 didn't let the officers know what they were dealing with.
And that happens. She's right.
Well, and we have had a capo where he was at another police agency and beating up some. He loved to kick people ass. So it done cost Warren hundreds of thousands of dollars. Everywhere this guy go, they write a check on his behalf because he can't keep his hands off of people. What kind of background checks are the police agencies doing? Or do they give a fuck that they want a badass?
Well, things are changing, and they're changing for the better, and they have for the last 10 or 15 years with background checks. And it's better, but you have people that, this 2 months ago, we had a retired police officer, a separated police officer from Flat Rock kill it himself, and his wife is still alive. But people pass. It's just like TSA. Somebody's going to get through. Again, I'm not making excuses. It's tragic when somebody dies. It's always tragic, but it's tragic when kids get killed when they're shopping for shoes in East Point too.
Well, yeah.
Well, you know what? There used to be a time where the Detroit Police Department used to recruit white Southerners to the department because they said they knew how to deal with the black folks, and they went down south, Mississippi, Alabama, and they brought them up here, and that's what they did, and they was tough on the black community, and how tough they made it so tough that when they had 43 riots and you had 40 or 50, and I don't even think you had that many black police officers. They got their sidearms taken from them, so they was out on the street without weapons. So
let me ask you a question, Jim. Do you think that when you have policing agencies that are in areas where there's a high rate of crime, that sometimes that the officers may not follow correct protocol because there's so much crime? I mean, one of the things that Eric just brought up was what happened in East Point. Now, we were watching in real time because 7 Mile Radio was right on it. I'm sitting up here on Saturday watching it. These young people, and they said it was young ladies, and I guess it was true because ladies was arrested. But do you think that the officers also have that in mind, especially if they're working in areas where it's high crime rate areas?
Well, I think that Detroit over the years and some of these bigger cities, Memphis is a great example. People are attacking the police in the last 20 or 30 years I don't even know if it's however long. All right. And the last since the Rodney King incident, early 90s, things have changed in policing. So instead of getting better police officers, I think in some cases you're getting worse police officers. Mm-hmm. The 4 out of the 5 guys that were charged in Memphis had a internal record, right? They've all been charged internally, and they're all together following their leader, Sarah Davis. I'm going to say her name again, who's saying, go on out there and clean up our streets. We don't care if some people get hurt. That's how they led down there, and that's why this happened. She's just as responsible as they are, if you ask me.
Listen, Dad. But
she's still a chief, by the way.
People, since there's no residency, and when I first came back to Detroit, well, you had residency. most of the police officers even lived on the far east side or the far west side. And as they was trying to move up, you know, you don't protect, you're not invested in these neighborhoods. So
And you had a residency unit that followed cops all over, right? Remember those days?
Yeah, and you had people 10 cops with the same address and shit, you know, 'cause they living out in the suburbs. And these people supposed to be our first responders, and you got people living in Brighton, Toledo, all over the place. Damn, if we had a disaster, we'll still be waiting on them to get to Detroit. But the bottom line is some people in the community look at the cops as an occupying force who do not care about what happens in that particular neighborhood when you only got 1 or 2 police cars patrolling. And if you call them, they don't show up for an hour, 2 hours, or don't come the next day or whatever.
So can we ask Vanessa this question? Was it the federal government that fucked up the Memphis case? By pushing charges, federal charges?
I think so. I think they should have allowed the state case to play out and then had to do whatever it is that they want to do. Absolutely. And we see that a lot. Okay. We'll see a case where somebody has something going on in the state and feds want to pick it up. They wait to see who's going to do what first and let it play out before then they move in. So yeah, I think they do. Listen, I want to say this earlier because I agree with the statement. Ed Altman says, as a veteran, you can teach policy all day, but you can't change what's in a person's heart. And that is absolutely correct. I agree with him. If you already have views about different kinds of people and that kind of thing, it doesn't matter. You can have all the training in the world, but what's in your heart, it's going to come out.
Yeah, why be a fucking if you don't want to be around a certain group of people, don't become a fucking a law enforcement officer in that fucking community. You know, go someplace else where you feel like you can go eat some donuts out of a donut shop and shit and say hi to Aunt B and Opie and shit.
Those people are the most dangerous, Adolf. Those small town cops are far more dangerous than a big city cop.
Well, at least you know all the players.
And you know what, Adolf, you talk about residency, you're talking about in the city of Detroit. Listen, if I was an officer, it's going to have to be attractive for me to live here in the city. Now, let's be real, okay? There's only certain areas where you can live.
Don't take our check.
I'm just saying. So when we talk about residency, we need to have, when we talk about residency, you have to think about how attractive it is for someone to live in that community in which they police.
Well, I had a job where I had to live in the community, and I didn't want to live there, and I understand. It's like, and the folks say, well, why are you want to work here? Because I wanted to get the experience, but I didn't want to live in there. And the only reason I didn't want to live there is because I couldn't afford to live there. It's like I found someplace else cheaper. That's all it was. Not that it was the worst thing in the world, but people have their reasons why they don't want to live in a place. The wife don't want to live there. The school system's fucked up.
Exactly.
Whatever. I understand.
In DC, there was no residency requirement for police officers, but there were some landlords who were offering free rent, so police would live in those communities or deep discounted, and a lot of officers took them up on that. So if we don't have a mandate, we should at least try to be creating a situation where people have incentive to live in the city.
Trenton has a residency bonus.
You're saying that's a good question. You should ask when we have our debate with the mayoral candidates, because I think that is a real issue, and I think that would be an awesome question.
But that's the state legislature.
Derrick Henry said, "Go to Bad Axe."
Whatever they say, it's just like the prison system here in Michigan. If it wasn't for the prison system, a lot of these small towns, Ionia and all that, these people wouldn't have any jobs. You know, so people profit from Detroit crime and big city crime.
Some of the best paying jobs up in the UP are the prison jobs.
And I was doing working on a paper one time in grad school, and they said one of the counties that had 40% black population was in the it was a fucking jail, the prison, in a small town. I said, okay. Yeah, I get it. This is their economy. And they count them as a part of the population, and they get paid.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's
all systemic. I mean, I went to Montgomery, Alabama while I was down south, and there's a museum down there called the Legacy Museum.
I've been there.
On the building it says from slavery to mass incarceration.
Yeah.
What's one of the mottos on their building, and it's to the point about I think you said Adolf, but they don't want to be a cop in the city that they don't like people. Well, they're going to be a cop in the city they don't like people because they have control over those people in that city that they're working, and it's all about control and power.
Well, as a control and power, but the bottom line is like you join the military, and I never understood people that join the military. I'm not talking about drafted, I'm talking about join. And then when they get there, they go out of their way to get the fuck out of there. Because it's not, I don't know what they was thinking, that this is what you're dealing with. Got to take orders. You got to do this, got to do that. Well, I ain't fighting no damn war. Why are you in the military? Why did you join the Marine Corps? Why did you join the Navy or the Air Force or the Army? And, why are you a cop? You see these TV shows where the guy's a cop and his wife is like, she want him to quit. Bitch, you married him when he was already on the force. Now all of a sudden you don't want it. You was living a good life. You don't want him to. I guess you don't want him to not come home. I understand, but that's all part of this. It has its good points and bad points. I wanted to join at one time to be a cop, but then I realized give me a weapon, I'm gonna use it.
And we have a real police expert, our legend Ira Todd, weighing in now. I wish he was here about 45 minutes ago, but that's okay. Derek Henry, we all remember Copper Canyon. You want to stay out of those bars along the Rouge River over there, because there's a bunch of drunk cops in those bars. And you don't know.
Yeah, kick your ass, and get
shot.
Yeah, and listen,
those were professionals. Those guys were good drinkers back then.
Just to change the subject for a minute, Tracy asked, did we see the story about the principal at King High School? The principal of misusing money. Yeah, we saw it. I think we had an off-camera conversation about it the other day. It's a shame.
That's it. So I'm gonna make a citizen's arrest there.
Ira Todd said you would have been a damn good cop, Adolf.
I don't know, but
he volunteered to be your partner in case you change your mind.
Listen,
he'll be your field training officer.
I'll have about 100,000 ribbons. I get myself my own medals. But the bottom line is we'll know by Friday whether or not we have a verdict in Grand Rapids or not. That we probably have a new pope. Probably by Friday. And let me throw this question out here: do anybody give a damn? Whether we about the Pope, I
don't.
I do. I mean, I hope it's somebody who's got some. I think this Pope had some positivity in a world that and stood up to really Trump and other people and said, talk about goodness. And I hope it's somebody who's accepting of it and is not very narrow in terms of, we don't need a really conservative Pope.
I don't get Jim. You're not Catholic, are you?
I am not, but the Pope said some really interesting things, and he did say that you should be able to protect your country from the criminals coming in too. Though he said people that are fleeing, whatever they are, starvation or environmental issues, earthquakes, you should let those people in. And the Pope was absolutely right. I agree.
Yeah. The best Pope that I like was the Borgias, because they created a criminal enterprise. Listen, he had him about 8 kids.
Right.
He had a nephew that was Pope. He was Pope. And what, Leo? That's who the Pope was. Yes, his kids was thieves and shit, rapists, murderers. Listen, the Pope is something else. And going to the Vatican, and I'm not a religious person. I said, well, I'm in Rome. I'm gonna go to the Vatican. Went to the Vatican. I said, I'll be there for an hour or two. Shit, I was there half the day looking at dead popes and shit. People has been in a casket 500 years and shit.
Our viewer, Deborah Harris, says she doesn't care about the Pope. David Porter, thank you so much for watching. He says he liked Pope Francis, even though he's not Catholic. And Edward Altman says, Adolf, I will be proud to serve with you as a Marine.
Ain't no question.
I think, in terms of the Pope, it doesn't matter if you're Catholic or not. He's a world leader like all the other world leaders on the stage.
But you know what, the Pope, they was collaborators with the Nazis and everything else.
Yeah, well, that was previous.
And we have had some bad popes, some anti-popes.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
that's why we want to have a good Pope again.
What's the other Pope? Benedict? He was a thief, right? They forced him out of there.
Yes, Ira. Tell Ira we talked about Grand Rapids and we talked about Memphis too.
Yeah, no question. Well, you know what? We'll be back.
I could have used them.
We'll be back on Friday, and that's a pretty good show. And I want to thank all the folks that commented and watch us and stuff. Vanessa, thank you. Eric, Jim, Alan, listen, this police stuff, it's just not gonna go away. And unfortunately, you can go to most major cities and we've got police issues.
Yeah. So I just want to say, Ira Todd said he said, dang, he missed it because he wanted to know if we talked about the Grand Rapids incident. Yeah. Joella said, and still didn't see all the Vatican in that half a day. Felicia Dean, who's in California, thank you so much for watching. Join us again Friday evening at 8:30 p.m. We will have a spirited conversation. Detroit Black and White. Tell your friends about Detroit Black and White.
I might be the new Pope. I might be the new Pope. You see it'll be red, black, and green smoke coming up. Not the white smoke. Yes, they say we got a new Pope. He's out of Detroit. But anyway, we'll be back. Thank you very much.